Awesome. We're live. Welcome, everybody. I'm super excited to have this conversation today. For those of you that might be joining in that are new, my name is James Wightman, and I am a coach to 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs. Basically, I help them take their what they've learned in personal development and their growth programs and actually implement it into their life to simplify it so it makes sense. Because there's so many opposing opinions and views. And the single factor that helps you decide what works for you is you. That's why there are so many different ways to do things. And so today we have a special guest, Tamara, who's a client of mine, and she is going to be sharing some of her journey. Before I get into that, I'll let you introduce yourself, Tamara.
Well, my name is Tamara Rasheed, and I am an author, and I monetize my own intellectual property. And in doing that, I've learned how to market books very well, and I make it my heart's purpose to just kind of break open marketing for authors and make it easy and digestible and accessible. So that they're not confused and all their books sell the way they intend to, and they can find people they serve.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Especially there's so many people who have a unique viewpoint, a unique perspective that it's actually important for them to make sure they're owning that and they're utilizing that because that's their gift into the world to make a difference. And so it's wonderful that they have someone like you to help them with that.
Thank you very much. Like,
Yeah.
I find most people have big messages and they want to share that. And so
Yeah.
that's what I try to help people do.
Cool. I love it. And so, for anyone that's listening, when Tamira had first started coaching a few years ago, she was actually in this place, which is common in personal development. I went through it myself in the beginning. Essentially, you're taught a few different things. One is you're taught that you are the 5 people that you surround yourself with. You're taught that your environment influences you and it impacts you. A lot of times people are also taught they get in their life what they're tolerating. And so the natural, reaction to these things is to kind of be like, well, you know what? I'm just going to reject these things or I'm going to remove these people. And ultimately, people lose friendships. They start resenting where they're living. They're resenting where they're at in their journey, which is kind of the place that you had kind of come in through. And through our journey, I helped you get to that other side where you could actually appreciate where you're at in order to move towards where you want to be and to actually receive the things you desire, to actually have a good balance between the people that provide influence and you help lift one another up. And then you might have just the friends in your life that you want to do a barbecue with or something, and so I think this is wonderful that we get to talk about this journey, that you get to share what that was like for you, because I think a lot of people struggle with this. And
Yes.
so I'd love to dive in. How does that sound for you? Is there anything that you want to add?
That sounds incredible. And actually, I feel like this is the best time to talk about this because like there's a new space opening up as a result of having done those things. And so I'm the level that I'm enjoying my life now. I'm enjoying it as if I've achieved everything on my list.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a unique perspective to look at your life through
Yeah.
when physically things are still becoming those things. Like around me, I don't see my environment different physically, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I'm so different, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what's going on in my environment. I appreciate it and I'm grateful for it. And it's not just like a lip service thing,
Right.
it's like ingrained in me. So yeah, this is I think everything you said was really exactly on point. I kind of found myself floating in this space between here's like being social
Mm-hmm.
and being a hermit was like right here.
Yeah.
And I was like floating in between and I'm just kind of touching either space, trying to find ways to be able to communicate with people in a way that is helping me to open up who I am. Like
Yeah.
you don't really discover, where it is you want to go, or it's hard to kind of look at your environment and get inspired by that, and then see yourself and what you should appreciate by looking at it. So you need like something else to kind of steer you in that way, and you really did that for me. Like you have this way of thinking that I always gravitate to. Like you have this way,
Yeah.
you know. I think the way you say it is, let me tell you how I think about this.
Right.
You
Yeah.
doing that for me was really helpful. Like that opened up a world for me.
No,
So
I really appreciate you sharing that, because essentially everyone has a different viewpoint and just like the perspective that they're looking
yeah,
towards. And so anytime we try to like shove something on somebody, people's natural reaction is to push back,
yes.
or if we tell someone the way that it has to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think growth is this idea of softening and opening up to almost like opportunity, or opening up to the way
Mm-hmm.
things could be. Because otherwise, if we're holding down, or just like shutting down, what starts to happen is that we look at what we've done, we look at our journey, and even though we've made progress, if it's not exactly what we want, we can sort of reject it and start to
Yeah.
reject ourselves, and think very little of ourselves. And the truth is, what we want is always on a horizon. We probably have today what we once wanted at a previous point in time. I'd love to, if you're okay with it, we can kind of take this in stages. We could do what things were like in the beginning, or maybe what you learned.
Yeah.
And then we can go into perhaps our work a little bit. So the first part is kind of, I guess, pre our work together. The middle part is some of the teachings and discoveries from our work together that helped get you to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then three, the possibilities that have opened up for you from really adopting this way of approaching your living and approaching your life. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah,
Cool.
really.
Yeah, let's start sort of with the idea of the personal development and just what you were taught, or what got you to the place where you thought you had to be rushing towards all these things and rejecting where you were at. I guess like let's start there.
That's a long road. So I would say that probably started for me in childhood.
Hmm.
Like in childhood, I was in an environment where the people who cared for me, what they said to me was very destructive. And it didn't just work as these people saying negative things to me, it worked like rewriting my vocabulary to myself.
Hmm.
And so in childhood, I kind of adopted this way of being, which was to minimize myself as much as possible and do what I could to help other people, whatever I could do to help someone else. But it was like in that mode, it was like I'm doing that so I could eat. If I'm nice to you and I take care of you and I'm good, you're happy with me, then I can make sure I get my needs met. So as a
Yeah.
child, it was like that. And that kind of put me on this journey of understanding people and relationships and trying to connect with people. And that forced me to kind of look at myself and how I was showing up and what did I want to do and what did I want to be. And, it kind of shaped, my desire for more, my
Yeah.
desire to have more in my life. And what I wasn't really given in that space was a sense of self. I wasn't really given a sense of my own identity. And I found my identity in how I could help other people. But it
Right.
wasn't service, right? It's not service. It's just being kind of a minion in a way, can I get your remote or can I get this and that? And I made that work because for me, I had a hard time kind of hanging on to, well, who am I? And what is my
Mm.
significance? Where do I belong? And so, like I said, that kind of put me on this journey of trying to discover where I fit. I seem to not be able to fit in so many places, just in terms of the way I understood things and how I spoke. And I stuttered a lot, and I didn't speak very loud. I spoke in my head voice to myself. And so most of the time people couldn't even understand what I was saying when I would speak,
Yeah.
because it was kind of mumbled and things like that. So I ended up just taking off running when I got this sense that the value I had for myself was different from what I saw, from how other people looked at me. The value others had for me, it didn't match the way I saw
Mhm.
myself. And that kind of set me off running, And so before I knew it, I was learning emotional freedom technique. And well, first I learned about psychology, child development, and what are how do people develop as children, and what at the different stages, what's expected at different stages. And
Right.
then I had my first child at 18, and having my own baby, I'm like watching him develop and grow. And that became my special interest. I was really interested in growth and development, and how can I help this little person not feel the way I did. And that was the rocket ship to the rest of that. As a parent, I want to be the kind of parent that feeds identity, lets you see yourself. I want you to see yourself and learn how to appreciate yourself and who you are, so that
Mhm.
when you go to school and you go out into the world, you're not trying to figure out those things while you're trying to be social. And so that's my relationship with my kids now. So it
Yeah.
was like, yeah, personal development was like, I didn't know what it was called at the time, but I was developing myself just because I felt I didn't get enough. I didn't get scaffolding. And I think that was what I had been chasing for decades, scaffolding. And I have to get that from other people. I can't get it from myself. That was my understanding. Whatever it is I needed, it doesn't come from me, it comes from
Mm.
everyone else. And so that when I met you, I was the product of all these other brains that I had kind of gleaned from. And I was just out of therapy. I had been in therapy that time for 2.5 years. I had therapy bits and pieces through my life, and didn't find that it worked at that time. At this particular time, I found someone that really connected with me and matched me, that I met through my chiropractor. But I got to a point where it just kept ripping open these wounds. And I was wondering, okay, we ripped this wound open last week. I just finished getting to a place where I could talk about it, talk again after dealing with that, the re traumatizing from talking about it without a
Yeah.
solution. And then what's next? We just keep doing this. And it was like, uh, I just didn't care for the tools I was learning in that setting. And so when I met you, I was like, it was in a business coaching atmosphere, but I was like, I feel like I can have a different conversation with James about where I'm trying to go. And maybe not having the words right now, maybe he would get it and
Mm.
kind of help me figure it out. It was kind of like that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you, sharing those highlights of the journey, because I think everyone has this, especially when they get into personal development, has whatever their variety of moment is, right? I think mine probably came from, my parents getting divorced. And I think, as a little person, I just kind of probably looked and was like, oh, I don't like that. So let me look at this. And I just want the opposite, when there's actually good in a lot of the
Yes.
different things. Just as little kids, we aren't able to navigate that as well. And
Right.
then on top of that, being younger and getting into personal development, there's our own interpretation of what that means. It's
Yes.
not necessarily like hey, here's a philosophy if you want to adopt it. It's almost like I must do this to achieve
Mm-hmm.
what I want. And if I don't, I'm a complete failure, or I've done it wrong, or there's something wrong with me. So just you sharing your story, I think mirrored a lot of that, which I think everyone has their variety of moments. So I really appreciate you sharing yours. Um, and I really appreciate, just the context that you give, because you don't just like fluff stuff up. You're like, honestly, this is the experience of what happened, and I really appreciate you sharing that, particularly because I think when people have very challenging experiences like that, I think sometimes they can have the idea of these things won't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
When the truth is, just having your energy and attention on growth, it does happen little by little. I picture it like all these little puzzle pieces that start to come together, and we
Yeah.
discover for ourselves, which I appreciate you sharing as well about this idea of it happening in a business context, because most of the time when people come in from a business context, they're thinking we're going to talk about how do you become more efficient in your to-do list or SOPs, or how do you deal with like your 7-figure leadership and talking to team
Mm-hmm.
members. And it's actually just all the stuff from the past coming up in these particular moments that I'm like, you can do your to-do list. You actually are effective and efficient.
Yes.
And that's where I love the phrase, like the systems and processes that you have in your life are perfect. They're just getting you, they're perfect to get you the results that you're getting.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
they're actually working perfectly. It's just these are the results that we're producing.
Right.
And so that's why so much of the element, or so much of the coaching is on how can we actually help you see this within yourself? How can we help you implement this into your own life so it actually applies to you and it makes sense for you? And the way that you were able to just really run with things, I think was really special. And I don't want that to be confused with there aren't these moments of like breakdown and mistakes
Oh
and
my
all
God.
that, because there 100% are,
Yeah.
but they happen because you do run with those things. People that don't just set it to the side, you actually did apply it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pause there because I know I was on a little bit of a roll. Do you have anything that you want to share before we move into this next stage?
Oh wow. I mean, uh, you hit on so many things, but as usual, it's great. I feel like uh, in what I heard, it was more. Uh, Sorry, my thoughts are kind
It's
of
okay. I know that I touch on like a million things, so
like
it's
trying to grab
okay.
things out of the air, but yeah, we can move on. We can actually move on. Probably
Cool,
that's
cool.
actually my cue that there's no energy there and that stuff. You talked about it. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Um, so in terms of, what was most helpful for you, what would you say are the top 2 to 3 things that stand out to you from
Ooh.
our experience together that you might think, oh, this was different, or there's this key that really helps me shift this in my life, this idea of really being at peace with your environment and where you're at in order to move towards what you want.
The things that stand out to me right away are just having space held for what
Mhm.
you are actually feeling. Because for me, I had a lot of anger. I had so much anger, and I was angry that I was angry.
Yeah.
Like it didn't have, to me, I didn't want to have bad feelings. I was running from the bad feelings that were
Mhm.
attached to the things that I wanted my life to be. And so for me, my environment wasn't just where I was at, it was who I was, because I built it all by with my
Yeah.
hands, right? So this thing I built was not what I wanted it to be. And that was a reflection of to me in my mind, it was a reflection of my value, my worth. And, I work so hard to show people my value. and this is what it looks like. And so it stood out to me the biggest, just having space to say that. Man, I'm angry that I've done all this work and it doesn't yet look the way I want it to look, you know? And being angry that I had those feelings of being angry. And I remember you saying, anger is a feeling and humans have feelings. It's okay to
Mhm.
feel that. And it not to have a reason. It doesn't have to have a reason. That was like, what? I don't have to have a reason why I'm mad. It could just be there and I can feel it and I can just let it go. And I don't have to, hold on to anger and be angry that I'm angry, and it just keeps the cycle, makes it worse. And that,
Mhm.
it was like that was breaking that loop for me. And
Yeah.
so it was like the first thing that came to mind right away. The second thing I can remember that really stood out to me was um always like I would punish myself, right? So I would like, I didn't know that I was really doing that. I wouldn't have called that situation or those situations punishing myself, but I had a tendency to kind of beat myself up when I didn't feel like things were aligning the way I intended. I faulted myself and blamed myself, and I was very hard on myself. And I would hear people say that to me, how hard I was on myself, but I wouldn't really hold on to that because they're not doing what I was doing. How do you know how hard I am on me?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like I don't see, the comparison, you know. But it was in that particular situation, those feelings that I had, I was um sorry, I lost my train of thought.
It's okay.
What was I talking about again? Where did I kind of went off on a tangent with that?
Yeah, that's okay. I want to touch on something though, because
Okay.
I think it's really good. Um, especially when you were talking about being angry at yourself that you were angry.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think therapy can be great for people, and I think there's this element, right, where we can kind of want to keep going back to something,
Mm-hmm.
right, and this idea that if we get to the core feeling or if we get to the core moment, then everything will be fine.
Yeah.
And in my experience, even once we get to the core moment, it's just the same feeling that was occurring anyway, in the present,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And so we actually have the opportunity to handle it in the present. Um, and so I think part of that was an element of having peace, right? That there can be that it's okay that there's anger.
Yeah.
Um, if you didn't have these feelings, you probably wouldn't be a human being, right? And so I think that's just really important for who's ever listening. Like, the reason why you have different feelings is that you are human. Um, and you actually get to deal with those in the present. Sometimes we can just be angry because we see something, or we might get angry because someone else had like a stressful energy around us. And, what are we supposed
Mm.
to do? Blame them because they were stressed out? Or then are we supposed to blame ourselves? Or
Right.
maybe we're just like a sensory being that picks up on these things, and we just happen to be feeling that. Um, and so I think that's a really important point. And then, in terms of what you were talking about, I know I kind of went off. What do you last remember of what you were saying?
So you asked me, what are three things that really stood out to me? The
Yep.
first was the one about you holding space for me
Hmm.
in my feelings. The second one was, and I had said what it was, and then it kind of left me. Do you
Yep.
remember what I said?
I'll be honest, it slipped my mind as well. I always think it's just going to like
It'll
float
come
back
back.
up to the top.
Yeah, it'll come back.
I know that it will, but for some reason, as you're sharing, I think there's this idea that you're really touching on, right? Like one is the space was held,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then there's this other element, right? Because it's this idea about the environment
Yeah.
and having peace with those things.
Mm-hmm.
And if the original frame was that we need to reject it in order to get what we want, um, what do you think? How would you say you are treating that now? Like, what's the relationship like with the environment?
Well, now I'm a lot more loving towards my environment. I realized, so I bought my house when I was homeless, and
Hmm.
so that's what I was hanging on to, the circumstances,
Yeah,
right? The circumstances I was under when I purchased it weren't my favorite ones.
yeah.
And so looking at my environment, it reminded me, because it doesn't do that any longer, but it reminded me of a time in my life that I really wasn't proud of, and that I wanted to overcome. And so
Which is also what you were talking about. Remember, number two was that it wouldn't be far enough along for you compared to the results that you had
oh,
wanted.
there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect. I'm glad my question opened it up.
okay.
Um,
I get
yeah,
it.
because it wasn't moving fast enough for you, I think is kind of what you
Yes.
were getting at, but you were
See,
still putting in a lot of effort to it.
exactly. I'm putting in all this work, all this effort, and my environment was a representation of who I was when it actually wasn't.
Hmm.
And when you helped me see that who I was separate from what I was doing. It was like that was a concept that just didn't occur. I'm doing these things though. So how
Hmm.
is that the stuff I'm doing separate from who I am? And
Yeah.
it just blew apart this thing that said that um I am a sum of my actions. No, I am Tamara, and I happen to take actions
Hmm.
sometimes, but who I am is not dependent on what I'm doing. And the things that I've done aren't who I am.
Hmm.
They're just things I did. And so there was that was a huge epiphany for me. It seems really simple, but it was like um we put a lot of our crisis and our distress puts us in action, right? And the crisis and the distress that we feel when we're in action, it's like those things are dictating what it is we should be doing and how quickly we should be doing those things. And I had been living in this state of distress and crisis for decades.
Hmm.
And you really helped me see that, you know, uh, you know, it's not a survival mode thing anymore. you know, like you had all this pain. You were doing these things for pain. Is the pain the same? And like, you gave me a way to kind of assess what was going on around me and my actual output. And I got to
Yeah.
stand back and say, hey, I'm doing some pretty cool things,
Yeah.
but I'm not giving myself any credit for any of those things. So I feel like it's not making a difference because I'm
Hmm.
not celebrating anything,
Yep.
you
I
know?
um
Yeah.
I have a couple. I'm just going to do some reflections because I
Yeah.
think just anyone listening might be like, what are you talking about? I'm not my actions and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important, right, to realize that, how would I say this? Like, it's more about the spirit of it. Like, you may have a spirit or an idea of who you are and what you want to create. And let's say you take those actions. And they don't create the direct result
Yeah.
that you want immediately.
Hmm.
Right.
Yes.
So that's where it
Exactly.
doesn't mean that you're horrible. It doesn't mean that you're bad. It doesn't mean that
No.
you're not good at it. You actually did take the actions, but it doesn't have to specifically mean anything bad about you. You
Right.
actually want to dial into who you are and the spirit of what you're doing, not just looking around and, you might have a vision in your head of the way you want your, actually, if this one's okay to share, I think of when you first came in, there was the idea that you wanted to redo an upper bedroom, right? And
Mm-hmm.
for you, there was an element it hadn't been done yet, but you took some actions, but they were incomplete. And some of that was weighing on you. And that pain that you were talking about was kind of running in the background
Yeah.
of I'm not where I want to be or I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually helping you feel safe where you're at, seeing the spirit of what it is that you want to create, because your vision is always going to be greater than the current circumstance, which is why you have the vision. But if you're just looking around saying, oh, this doesn't match, there's something wrong with me, I'm not far enough along, those thoughts, those beliefs aren't going to help you make any more progress. In fact, they're probably going to be the thing that, for who's ever listening, holds you back. And so if you can dial into who you are, the spirit of who you are, and the vision that you're stepping into, that's going to help create the momentum. And for you, Tamara, you created an upstairs. You
I did.
created, another bedroom in the house. On top of like having amazing results in your business. And so it doesn't always move in the time that we expect. But the more we appreciate ourselves, the faster we're actually able to move towards what it is that we want to create.
Yeah.
Um,
And
did
that
that help recap like
it
a lot
really
of that?
it did, and it reminded me of the point that I was trying to make too about my house
Yeah.
and what that meant for me. Thank you, sweetie pie. These are yours. Okay, give me a moment, okay? I'm on my call. All right? Give me a moment. He just graduated. Yay, Noah.
Oh, nice. Happy
So,
graduation.
yeah, so 5th grade. But so it reminded me of the point that I was trying to make. My house not looking like my vision. The mansion or this whatever else I was trying to create, however that looked, the
Mm-hmm.
flooring and whatever, right? It not looking like that made me feel like I was missing something. But I learned to appreciate that my house was actually a representation of the love and the care that I put into um uh like turning myself I want to say turning myself into the person that I really wanted to be, that transformation that I was seeking. I was doing the same thing with my house. And my
Mm.
house, even though when I first saw my house, it wasn't even something I wanted to buy. But now it's something that's a home for us. And we love where we live. And we pour so much into, being here. And it represents something so different than it did.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There was an element before of it not being my vision. And now I get to rehab it into my vision. I get to take this thing that wasn't beautiful and make it beautiful. And in books, your first draft is like that. Your first draft, the first thing you write, you never like.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a post, it could be anything. The first thing you start writing, you don't like it, but you have to turn it into something beautiful. Ghostwriters help you turn something ugly into something beautiful, just random thoughts or whatever it is. And that's my house. My house was a hope and a thought and a representation of a lot of things, and a thing that rescued my family, gave us a roof when we didn't have one. And so now it's this beautiful thing that I got to pour back into, just like a lot of the parts of the rest of my life. I could
Yeah.
have left those parts of my life the way they were and been mad about them and tried to escape those things, but instead I processed them and I worked with them and I worked with me and I learned to appreciate who I am instead of making myself look worse than what I was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how it kind of turned into today. That's where it is today.
Yeah. I really love that, especially because, I think a lot of people relate to that. You're on Instagram going through this feed or wherever it is, TikTok. And you see, a lot of these houses and the way they have like the countertops and the white walls and all these different things. And someone actually had to share a fun fact with me because there would be so many different houses that I was attracted to.
Mm.
And the houses that we often see where they have that, it's been marketed as like this luxury item. But if you look, there's actually not real character in
Yeah.
those houses, not real color.
Right.
And the reason for that is it's actually meant to keep houses as minimal as possible so
Mhm.
people can place their vision there. And so those houses are actually really bare. And so I think what's beautiful about being a human and what you spoke about is we're actually able to take something and care for it and have love for it and turn it into something magical that we, see within it, whether or even within ourselves, or your is it your son that graduated fifth grade?
Yes. My second.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's all these little moments of like a tiny human that's becoming a larger human, and you give a lot of care for who they're developing and becoming. And it's the same thing, whether it's your artwork, whether it's your business. And so when you can have that, I think that's where something special really happens that, is just wonderful, right? Because it really does come from a place of love. And so we're able to see things that weren't there before, or we knew were within it, or were possible. And so it actually gets us looking from a lens of possibility. It
Mhm.
actually gets us looking at a lens of creativity to say, what could we do here? And so, yeah, you just inspired me to share that as you were talking. I love the way that you connected all that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, uh, it's like I really have learned how. First of all, I've learned to appreciate how I love. Right,
Mm,
like I had to look at, uh, again, I came into our coaching relationship in this space where I really didn't have a love or appreciation for myself, really. You know what I'm saying? I didn't even really know where to begin with that. And I'm saying that looking back at who I was then, and uh not being able to see any of the aspects that were positive and good about myself. I didn't even think about those things, to be honest. I was so
mhm,
busy taking action. I didn't stop for those kinds of things. I didn't try to assess who I was and what my values were, and very, very important building blocks in business ownership. you know, these are really important things. If you're disconnected from yourself, it's going to be really difficult to see cohesiveness in any of the things that you're trying to do. And those things are all going to come from other people, and people that you like the way they are doing things, because you're not acquainted with your own. And
mhm,
so I kind of had to put myself in a position, speaking about appreciation and being in an environment of my own body, right? I had to appreciate how I did things, my process. I used so many processes for that were created by everyone else. And I had gotten to a point where I had all these processes that I used, but I didn't know where mine was. I
mm,
could use a piece of this and use a piece of that, and then they never really seemed to fit together well or help me as much as I hoped. And it wasn't until I created my own process, that those things fell into place. And I had to nurture myself and love myself to even see that I had a process. I had helped people, I had testimonials, and I had all this other stuff, but I couldn't connect it to, I connected it more to, these people are awesome. Look at how great these people are.
yeah.
I'm helping them be great. And I wasn't looking at, hey, you're actually helping to transform some people's lives here. So you have a process. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot in that. There was a whole lot there.
Yeah, 100%. And I love the way you broke that down. There's a couple things that stand out to me, right? Um, One is this idea of, really appreciating yourself because, like you said, you were working, you were taking the steps, you were taking the actions. And a lot of that is the chasing, right? Like, we're
Yes.
actually chasing for those things and we're never quite catching up. But the reason we're even chasing in the first place is because we think there's something missing within.
Yeah.
And that's where that appreciation actually helps us be quite pleased where we're at,
Mm-hmm.
be pleased with ourselves. Because, the natural state of a human being is creativity, is expansion, but we want to make sure it's coming from the place of appreciating who we are, and from a good place, not from a place of lack. And so you were able to make that shift of it really coming from a place of what you want, not what you've been sold or told, that which is what most marketing is that we see. It's basically, hey, by the way, you're deficient, you aren't in the right place, wouldn't you love to have this great thing? And so that's what a lot of people are sold, and it's a
Mm.
complete lie. And so you were able to really tap into yourself. And then on top of that, as you do that and part of that process, I remember you would have these teachings that you learned. And I think it'd often be like, Tamara, I think you just need to like enjoy your days, just see how much sleep you
Yeah.
want, how you want to operate, how would you like your day. And it actually took a while, right, for you to
Yeah.
be like,
That's
no,
it.
I need to be taking actions today. I'm like, no, I actually think you'll make more money if you actually just slow down and get your rest. And I remember that went on for a bit, and all of a sudden you were like, James, I did what you said, and I had a client come in, or I had more money come in, or those things. And you're like, I actually know what I like to. I actually enjoy meeting with people in the afternoon and not the morning, or maybe it was vice versa, the morning but not the afternoon. Yeah,
I'm reminded of my third big thing that made a difference for me
yeah,
was conversations. How you told me,
yes,
Tamara, if you have a conversation, you might actually see some movement, some things happening. You didn't say it that way, but it dawned on me that way that, wow, I'm actually not talking to anyone. I'm just working on these funnels and I'm working on the
right,
posts and I'm so invested in my posts and getting them right and all this other stuff that I really was not actually just striking up a conversation. And
hmm,
all the pretty much all the early strategies I took, um, where I'm having those conversations and adding value and sharing from a place of value and answering questions thoughtfully and thoroughly, and that's how you get the attention of people who really will care about what you have and who you are and things like that, by adding value to their lives. And I mean, that was a huge epiphany that, I just wasn't, I was talking, but I wasn't talking in a way that would actually get people to engage with me
hmm,
and let me help them, you know.
yeah. Which I think a
Yeah.
great distinction there, right, for anyone that's listening is, there's this balance, right? Because a lot of times when business owners come in, you know they're so focused on the social media and the SEO and the graphics in Canva,
Yes.
and a lot of these other things. And it is this element where I'm like, who have you spoken to? Who have you been of service to lately or this
Exactly how
week?
you
And
said
people
it.
are like, what are you talking about? I've been putting out posts every single day. And nobody's bought or something. I'm like, yeah, but who have you spoken to?
Right.
Well, I had someone hop on a sales call, but they didn't want it. And so, it's this element where
Yes.
it's like, how are we actually showing up? Because most people, when they think of having these conversations, or they think of being of service, they do think of a sales call, or do they do think of trying to influence or manipulate someone into the sale, right? Like, I
Mhm.
think on one of the posts that I put up, someone was like, yeah, with all this service, you might as well just charge for all your time, or something. Or they're like, yeah, it's a big waste. I'm like, no, I actually think you're missing the point. The point of service is not, you aren't trying to have them become a client. You actually just want to make a difference in their life. And the more
Wow.
people that you make a difference with, they actually want to hire you and they ask you those questions. It's just the problem is most people have, it's almost like they have resentment, right? Like they were a really helpful person early on and they felt like they were getting abused and used and they weren't getting paid. and they were just helping people, and then they learned business, and then all of a sudden they're hopping on sales calls, or they're trying to
Yes.
convince somebody. And so they actually just don't know how to be the leader in service,
Yes.
and mix it with the entrepreneurship, because the conversation does actually shift at a certain point, but it doesn't have the pressure of you need to work with me.
Right.
And it happens at so many different levels. Like, it first, I mean, whether it's you or anybody, it can happen with conversations where somebody wants to pay you $50, or it can happen in conversations where someone wants to pay you 50,000, or it can happen in conversations where people want to pay you 150K or more. Literally,
Yeah.
same process. It's just who you're connected with, the way you're being of service, and how you want to show up, but it not being about like sales. Like, people already know what you do. Just come from a place of love, and that growth, just like you did with the house. Oh, we could do this. It could be this. And here's some steps that you could take. Like, that makes a huge difference for people. I'm going to pause there. I feel like I'm just like on a roll. Go
No,
ahead.
it's great. Like, those are exactly everything you said was exactly, my process and my thought, about that. And like you want to, the natural inclination I feel for entrepreneurs, period, is to help and to serve and to share. But we get caught up in, well, where's the money? How do I tie in the service and the helping and those things with the money? And uh, in order for money to be generated, it is an appreciation thing, right? You have to be able to appreciate that the person you're talking to is bumping up against something in their life. And, and in saying that, the thing they're bumping up against is the most important thing to them. And they don't want to talk about it. They want to talk about it, but they don't know that they want to talk about it with you.
Or they don't know how to
Or
talk
they
about it.
don't have the words, like my
Mhm.
authors, they don't have the words, to the vocabulary to say, hey, I do have something more than just the book, not just
Mhm.
the book, right? I have
Yeah.
more than that, but I don't even, how do I say, how do I even tell you, speak to it? And so much of it is really creating a connection with people and a safe space so that they can create a safe space, or you can create a safe space with them so that they can tell you what those things are that are bothering them, or what their victories, even what their victories are, and those kind of things. It doesn't always have to be pains and problems,
Mhm.
right? Pains and problems are not the way to everybody's uh you know value, right?
Right.
So,
Yep.
but it can create an understanding of what's valuable to them, right?
Right.
And so, like, all of those things, I feel like uh the appreciation factor when it comes to the people you're serving, if you care enough about them, they'll see that, and you'll differentiate yourself from everyone else because you care. Like, when you show up as a person that has like actual thoughts and depth, and you're not just buy my thing, and you're when you approach it differently, like a human being, someone who cares, then
Mhm.
people will, they'll pay for your service. They'll even go and look for other people, because the way you treat them makes people think most people are going to be like that in that space. They're
Yeah.
not. And you'll stand out. You'll stand
Yeah.
out. So, yeah, like appreciating just where people are at so that you can serve from a place where you can appreciate what you're giving them. I
Mhm.
feel like I love myself so much more now that I can hear people better past my own stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not burdened by the things that I'm going through in my life, because I'm at peace with those things in my life. And
Yeah.
I had to get to that place in order to serve. Not everybody has to travel a journey that far. I feel like my journey was pretty long. I feel like, I
Yeah.
bumped into a lot of things, but I also did not invest in myself until later.
Mhm.
I feel like if I had um, someone who could have spoken to me in a way where I could understand that I could generate what I needed to invest into myself, then I would have um, had a different way to think about it back then,
Mm-hmm.
because it was
Yeah.
occurring. Money occurred to me as, you know, something really difficult to obtain. And when people asked for money, it just seemed impossible. But it was
Mm-hmm.
just because I didn't have a different frame of reference. I had
Yeah.
no other thing to draw from than what I knew. So if you can create that for someone else, they will, not only will they invest with you, but they'll be able to continue to invest in themselves in a way that's really fruitful for them. And that's a transformation, a money transformation for somebody that makes a tremendous difference. It made a huge difference for me.
Yeah.
Paying you, being able to pay you in the state of mind that I was in when we first met, was a stretch. It was
Mm-hmm.
a real stretch to say I can do this for me, and it's not, there's going to be a return on it, but it's not going to look like post engagement. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's not going to look like 30 comments.
Yeah.
But honestly, it does look like that, because
Mm-hmm.
I get now an opportunity to create something that people really respond to and they care about at depth,
Yeah.
because I took that time for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Oh,
you've created six-figure years and amazing things. And so there's always this, wonderful journey and like these ebbs and flows. And for some reason I just feel really compelled to share this because I think especially when people are tying it to service and helping others, sometimes when someone tries to pay, even when you aren't asking yet, um, people can reject that, and I think of it as though
mm,
someone brought over like cookies to your house or something and you just smack it out of their hand. You're like, no, 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 you don't have to pay me. That's actually how people know how to give.
yeah.
And that might
Mm,
be the way that people actually want to give. And so if
mm.
someone's trying to pay you, I would say
I'm on a
take
call.
it.
I'm being interviewed right now, sweetie. I'm being interviewed. Give me a moment. Take us. Okay. All right, sweetie. All right.
Well, you're good. I remember I was interviewing. I have a friend of mine, and she has literally six or seven kids, and they were all around. She had one of them on her lap, so it's all good. It's part of
They're
family.
going in and out and they're doing things and they just want to inform me. They're communicating that with
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
So I'm not, I can't be mad about it,
yeah. Absolutely, it just goes
And
with the
those
territory.
things
Yeah,
evolve, right? How I respond to my son right now is just right now how I've responded to him,
yeah,
right? I get to change that. I get to see how I interacted. And that was part of our work too. I
yeah,
get
yeah. Absolutely, I love it. And so essentially what I was saying, if someone's trying to give you money, let them give you money. I think there's like a story like, oh no, they're on hard times, or oh no, they just felt like they needed to do it. People actually want to give. Let them give you money, because if you don't, you're kind of going along the belief that money is finite, that you can't access, that they can't make it, you can't make it. And
mm,
so it ends up in this whole perpetual thing where we're actually rejecting the thing that's trying to come into our life. Um, and so I would say let money circulate. It's going to come to you. You're going to let it go. It all comes through
yes.
in that process. And so when we say no to actually receiving money, it's kind of as though we've put in all this effort. We're wanting money, but for some reason we think this person trying to give it to us isn't okay. It doesn't line up, when that's actually false and not the case. So just let money circulate, be open to receiving it. Um, and, even if it's a surprise, just let yourself receive it. The universe, source, God, whatever you want to do, is trying to bring these different things or different people into your life. And just be open to receiving all the gifts that are actually available to you. Most of the time, we just spend our life actually rejecting everything that's there.
Yeah, or being afraid of being rejected, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or just not even being in aware that you're not receiving. Your arms are like this, and you just naturally don't receive,
Hmm.
but you're always there to give other people something,
Yeah.
and it it can't always be, you know, you're giving all the time and not allowing yourself to receive. I heard someone say sometimes people want to receive like this.
Mm-hmm.
So their arms are stretched out, I'm ready, but then their hands are closed. And it's like, you know, so it's those, all of those things are a process too, right?
Yeah.
It's a process to realize you have the sum of the things that you've asked for and that you were willing to accept.
Yeah.
You know, so even though you ask for it, you also still have to be willing to accept it when it gets there. And when it gets there, it often doesn't look the way you thought it was going to look. And so
Yeah.
you have to allow yourself the ability to generate yourself newly in moments where it's not what you expected it to be. And I find that that's when your environment really changes for you. Your
Yeah.
environment really changes when you're willing to let go of the things that you thought, the box that you created around the things that you thought it was going to look like. It was going to come packaged like this, you know. And I found that whenever I was willing to step outside of what I thought I was going to get, I was so surprised. I was so surprised by the quality of it. And then when I did get what I wanted, it was just cherries on top, or it was like, you know, it was a special um addition to those things. So
Yeah.
yeah, like that, yeah, that was what it reminded me.
I love it. I think that's a great place to end too, right? This idea of being open to receiving what's coming your way and it not having to look as what you predetermined.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Tamara. You know, if anyone is interested in connecting with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, well, the best way is to come to my Facebook profile. You can add me as a friend or follow me there. You could also go to my free group, which is called the Six Figure Authorpreneurs. It's tips, tricks, and strategies for growing your book business. But it's also an opening to creating your own intellectual property. So my whole thing is books. You know, books are really great, but books are an entry. They're a gateway, a doorway, and you have a bigger message that this book is kind of knocking on your life to say, hey, you really need to share that. And so that big message is a lot deeper than just your book. It's also an access to other ways that you can, like we talked about value, other ways you can package value and turn it into assets. And then those assets will produce what it is that you would like it to produce. You would be the publisher of it. So I
Mhm.
self-publish my own assets according to the audience I serve. And that makes the whole thing a lot easier when you have a context for the whole thing. And so I help people create context around that. And so
Awesome.
come to the group and watch my show.
Awesome. I
Yeah.
love it. And for those of you that listened today and you really, you know, enjoyed this conversation, if you're interested in more, you can go to jmwhiteman.com. And if you're interested in coaching, you can go there as well. It shares more about what I do, who I help, and a way to inquire. You know, if you're sick of feeling like you're always having to chase something and you're never quite pleased with where you're at, um, that's a definite growth area that I've helped a lot of entrepreneurs with. And that's actually what surprisingly helps them blast off to get what they want, is actually working on that specific thing. And so it was wonderful to speak with you, Tamara. I appreciate everyone that took the time to listen today. And until next time, I hope you have a great day. Bye, everybody.